Um, so I'm Joe Sutcliff. I'm head of PR and comms at London South Bank University. And this year we were awarded University Year for Graduate Employability. It's something that we're particularly proud of because at LSBU we take in some of the most diverse students in the country. We're probably the university with the most students whose parents have never been to university, and lots of them come from really sort of deprived backgrounds. But we've not always been like that. 3 years ago, we had a new VC and chief executive who came in with a new corporate plan, and but the corporate plan wasn't working. And part of that was because staff just couldn't engage with it. So he employed me to try and change that. And I'm someone with no experience of intranets. I don't even have experience of staff comms. I come from a political campaigning background, and I'm still not entirely sure why he gave me the job. But I had done lots of work with universities previously about engaging students and making a change. And so he really set me the challenge of how can we get staff to sort of get into this corporate strategy and make the change that we really needed. And I started off by doing all the usual things. We created a cascade system, we changed emails, but we didn't have a functioning intranet. We had an intranet that didn't deliver really anything, but we were surviving without it. This is what it looked like. And this was something that hadn't actually, when I got there, hadn't been updated for 3 years. There was about 25,000 pages of content which hadn't been looked at. And all they did before that 3 years was just add new pages if they wanted stuff. So what was actually happening was staff were just creating their own intranets in terms of they're writing Word documents and then saving them on their hard drives. If people wanted something, they would just email it around. And so we've got 2,500 staff, 40 different departments, probably had about 2,500 different intranets. And it was something that didn't work. And then we also had, this is the sort of thing that the departments would be a SharePoint where people put documents to die. So I did all the things that I thought I should do. I came to conferences like this. I read a lot of books, and we did a lot of interviews, we got forums, we did surveys, and we built a set of user stories that we needed to address, and we tried to keep it quite simple. And I developed a business case that I presented to our board with 2 options. One, which I really preferred, which was to buy a product which I'd found at a conference that I thought would really work and would be really simple for us to do. Or we could build our own and use lots of different bits that we had around the university, using our intranet, using a development team who would help us to do that. And sadly, they picked the latter option. This is what it looks like now. It was about 12 months of hard work. We incorporated Yammer into it. And part of the reason why we did it in-house was because previously we had built so many of our own systems ourselves that they felt it was easier for the dev team who had done that to build something themselves. And really, this is about the 7 things that I wish people had told me before I started the project. And I appreciate that many of you are probably intranet professionals or run an intranet. So I hope at the very least this gives you an insight into what people like me, the problems that they come across. People struggle with the concept of agile development. Because we didn't have a functioning intranet, we kind of just had to create something as fast as we could and then just launch it. But then people had a real struggle with the idea of they had lots of ideas that they're coming to us and we were like, that's great, we're going to incorporate it, but that's going to be in 6 months' time, 9 months' time, 12 months' time. And then that really boggled people's minds. They really couldn't address it. So we just started off with a really simple intranet page. People just had flat pages. They couldn't even highlight information. There was a basic search, though. Devolved governance requires time, money, and commitment. At first, there was a real desire across the organization for people to have their independence. So they really wanted a fully blown, devolved intranet. And everyone pledged to say that they would provide the resources within their teams to give the support. But what actually happened was we'd get one of 2 things. Either one, where we had someone who was quite low level in the organization who was really keen, really active and engaged, but we'd have an approval process where it needed someone else in their department to approve it, and they would either not care or not approve it. So then we had a situation where that was just a bottleneck. It didn't really matter. Or we had the opposite, where we had someone who was pretty high up, maybe a director of a department, who was really engaged, could see how this would change things, but almost got obsessed by it, and then devolved it to the person in their department who didn't care. Usually the person who just started, who might have done IT at university or something. So that was one of the things that we really struggled with, and one of the things that we're moving to now is a system where we actually flex our governance model depending upon the different department. You can't make complex, nonsensical processes simple. So one of the outcomes of the internet that they had was that people had just created really bizarre processes, and none of them really worked. So I actually found part of my job was going in and becoming like a change manager, getting people together, looking at their systems. You'd quite often get, just to organize some travel abroad, you might need 7 or 8 different departments involved in that. They didn't even know who each other were. Or you'd also have a situation where training within the university, we do loads of great training programs, but there might be 10 different departments doing different training programs, nothing linked up. So we had to bring those people together. And it was just me and one other person, whilst also doing our day job. So it was all consuming. Apply best practice to your own circumstances. When I came to events like this, I'd speak to people. We're also very lucky. We have 90 businesses on our campus. One of those is a digital consultancy, and they gave us some free advice. But in my gut, I knew some of the things that they were saying were wrong. But I just sat there and went, do you know what? You're the experts. Whereas actually what I needed to really do was apply what they were saying to the organization. And also, although I didn't have an internet background, I did know the principles of comms. I had created effective websites and other things in other situations. Target influences. I guess one of the things that people kept on saying was senior buy-in. For me, that was easy. I had a direct line to the Vice Chancellor. I wrote anything he went out. I wrote all his speeches. I went with him to all his sort of staff cascades. That bit was easy. It was a bit beneath that, and it was perhaps only halfway through the project where there was some real negativity within the organization from people who didn't like it. But those people were not the senior management. They weren't even deputy directors. They were the PAs. They were the sort of senior administrators in different buildings, the people that people went to get advice. And so halfway through, we sort of changed our tact, and we really tried to engage with those people. And actually, someone who's in my department now, first time I met her, she said she was never going to use that, and she was never going to use Yammer, and now she is the biggest advocate for our internet. Get people involved, but manage it carefully. We did a great job of getting everyone together, given their ideas. For instance, we had 600 people get involved in the IA, but we also had about 600 people who got involved in choosing the name for the internet. So London South Bank University is known as LSBU. We have a student portal which is called My LSBU. So the most popular vote was our LSBU, which then when you start talking to new people about my LSBU, our LSBU, there's also some other products, other services out there that's also got LSBU in the name. But unfortunately, we'd already said that we would go by a popular vote. And I think in hindsight, that was a big mistake for me. Understand the culture you're creating your internet for. I was immersed in a sort of the senior level of the university, where we saw everything about tasks and getting people to do different things, and about a corporate plan, about getting them to do it. But actually, the amazing thing about LSBU is we're doing a great job at educating the people who come to our university, and because of that, they're changing lives. And that's a bit that was sort of missing from the internet. We didn't have something which pulled out the amazing stories from around our university and actually the impact we're having in our local community. But then something happened which changed my perspective, which was halfway through, they thought I was doing such a good job that they made me head of all comms, events, press, and everything. And at that point, we didn't really have an identity or a personality as a university. If you went and spoke to people, everyone would have a clear idea about what we do and how we do it, why we're there, a real passion from most people in the organization for changing people's lives. So probably over the last 12 months, we've really worked to create an identity, a brand that people can coalesce around it. And it made me really think about what is the purpose of what we're doing. So we actually started to change a lot of the content that we were producing. So instead of it all being about task focus, we actually started selecting stories which even our academics wouldn't think were interesting. Stories about people starting new businesses or the backgrounds that they come from. And we did that just by trying to create a sharing culture. And we've got a long way to go. But we use the internet to get people to use Yammer. We use the internet to train people about really basic ways of using Twitter. And said to them, like, if you've got those little stories, you put them on Twitter first. And then we'll pick them up and we'll make them big.
I don't know how someone that believed it.
Just say. So the next video I'm about to show is very short, but it's part of a longer video. It's a guy called Katan. At the beginning of the video, he talks about what his life was like before he came to university, where he came from a very deprived background. He got into a lot of trouble at school. He scraped into college, where he had a particular teacher who really helped him, but by no means was he a perfect student, and he never thought that university was for him. So here's an example of a story that we've started to use instead, which I think actually of all the stories we've done really brings out what our university is about.
I don't know, I had someone that believed in me. I think my life would have been very different now. I believe that I could have either been in a menial job that I hated, or like some of my friends being on benefits, or worse still, incarcerated, or worse still, no longer here. One of the things on my bucket list is I wanted to have my own business by the time I was 40. I felt like a weekend parent, working in the city. I was leaving in the mornings, my young children were sleeping, I'd get home in the evenings, they're in bed, and I wouldn't really see my kids awake till the weekend. And my wife used to send clips of them crawling for the first time and things like that. Initially, I set up in a box room at my mum and dad's house. I did that for about 13 months before moving into serviced offices. But yeah, so it was set up entirely by me, self-funded, and now I have an excellent team around me to support me. My company is called Buckingham Futures. We're a niche recruitment business, placing professionals in the environmental sector. Success is not just money. Success is having a balanced life. Success is being the person that everybody, apart from your mum, thought you couldn't be. That's success.
So that was Katan. I think it's a really powerful video. In actual fact, we've had 5 stories running during our clearing campaign over the summer, which is a key recruitment time for us. And that video's had 300,000 views, which for us is amazing and has really helped us deliver a great clearing campaign this year. But there are also lots of things that I wish I'd known before, but I couldn't have done anything about anyway. One of those was that actually the project was far too big than just an intranet. What the organization needed to do was actually look at its whole digital strategy, look at what it's doing with data, and it also needed to have a proper change program. Just simply putting in an intranet without looking at all the different processes and things that you're doing was never going to solve anything. Well, it did solve some things. We did achieve a lot. So for instance, within the organization, 98% of people say it makes their lives much better to do their job now. We regularly get massive amounts of hits. I guess it's really no point saying there's a lot more traffic than the previous one, because the previous one was poor. But we also have about 1,500 people who are regularly using Yammer, and this is for an organization where people are generally addicted to emails. And actually, one of the things that was quite scary was the way that when you took those emails away, people started to really freak out. But so I think the big thing was that it was far too big, but I didn't really realize that. But looking back now on that project, I can see that the intranet was a stepping stone. So we now have 2 big projects, one just to look at the whole digital strategy, and one to look at how we can deliver change management. And thankfully, I'm involved in those projects, but I'm not running it. So just to finish, I almost may be saying that our internet wasn't successful, but in terms of where we were 3 years ago, we were languishing at the bottom of the league tables. For the last 3 years, we've been the fastest riser. We've gone up about 40 places. We've got a TAF award from the government, which puts us in the same league as Imperial. And the Sunday Times will be releasing their tables again at the weekend. I hope that we will get something as good as this or better. Because our students, as I said, come from a really deprived background, but we're actually 4th in the UK for graduate employment. So if you think about all the universities out there, we're taking students who have very poor grades, and we're delivering them to be great graduates. So I hope that has given you some insight into what it's like to build an intranet yourself, some of the problems that you have. And if you have any questions, I'd be very happy to take them.
Great, thank you, Joe.
Thanks.